So how are you after all the traveling and
Yeah. Yeah, good. Doing good. I can't wait to hear about your time at Pittsburgh. So that must have been good. And I know you had a lot with the kids' track meets and everything. So
Yep, it was a busy, busy weekend. So I guess I'll guess I'll go Pittsford first and then we'll talk about SRAs. So I went over to the regatta on Saturday morning. So Saturday morning they had like the masters rowers, so the singles, the doubles, fours, quads, that kind of stuff. I saw Dan, so shout out to
yeah,
Dan. It was good
good
seeing that.
for
He has a
Dan.
beautiful boat. Oh my gosh, his boat is
Mhm.
gorgeous. And he looked fantastic out there. He was just like really moving the boat and just having some fun out there. So that was really fun to see. It was kind of like raining, like that kind of rain that's like not making you soaked. It's just kind of really damp. It felt kind of cold out and just kind of like misty. Like it makes me think of like when my kids watched Thomas the Train and Misty Island Railroad, where it was just like foggy and just kind of
Mhm.
overcast and gross. But so we were like the only people. Like I brought Mikey with me because I woke up early in the morning because the races were starting at 8. Pittsford's about a half hour from my house. So we left around 7:30, but he was up at like 6:45. So I was like, okay, well, why don't you come to the meet with me and or the regatta? And he was like, yeah. And then I was like, we're gonna go to Luke's meet after. And he's like, okay. So we got out there and he was in charge of the cowbell.
Nice.
I had to teach him some rowing etiquette as far as the cowbell. I'm like, you only ring it when the boats are going by. And then he was ringing it when the refs were going by, and he was like cheering for the refs. And they were they were very, I mean, because there weren't that many people out there, so we were
Yeah.
kind of the only people making noise. So they were really good hearted about it and would
Yeah.
wave at him when when they drive the launches by, and when he would ring the bell, he's like, "Go refs, you're getting it done." Um, so,
Well,
um,
they deserve it. It's a
they
hard job.
deserve it, they deserve it. It's hard sitting out in that launch all day long and, like, nobody's paying attention to you and everybody else is they only pay attention to you if something goes terribly wrong. So it was nice for them to get some recognition when things were going right. So,
Mhm.
we watched the men's singles, the women's singles, it's really fun watching all the different varieties and skill levels, kinda go by. I mean, you have someone like Dan who's, like, making it happen and looking like, 100%, and then there's people who are just like, "It's the beginning of the season. I just wanna, go from the start to the finish," and so that was really fun, and, those lanes are tight, so there was
Yeah.
something visually that was probably off a little bit as people were heading into the finish line, like, because I could tell, like, people's courses were kind of weird if they were in that middle lane. If you're on the
Mhm.
lane that was closest to, like, the spectators, they didn't seem to be having as much trouble as that middle lane and the travel lane. So, like, as there was, like, the finish line buoy, and then the travel lane kinda had to cut in pretty close to, like, the actual, like, racing lane, and then there wasn't another buoy until further up, but by the time people got to that buoy, they were in the racing lane. So, like,
Mm.
constantly the rest are like, "Blah, blah, 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 you are in the course," like, because it's just I think visually something was off. I don't know if there was a when they set up the buoys, maybe there wasn't, like, a pleasure boat there that was there during the actual racing, so that's always the hard part, I think, about being on the canal is to create 3 lanes out of something that's really probably only 2. There are moments where, it's not gonna exactly work, and, one of the crews from Genesee Waterways, they broke an oar, which we'll talk about later.
Saw that. Yeah.
They were at full pressure, and somebody was in the, travel lane, and, they were stopped, and so it just happened to they just happened to hit it just right where it's like a still blade and a moving blade, and, like, it's basically like slamming a blade against a concrete wall because I guess that boat that was in the travel lane had kinda moved over because there was a tree, and
Mm.
I guess it happened, like, kind of near the beginning of the race, so it took them, like, 6
Oh,
minutes to
geez.
get down the course, which yeah, it's only 1,200 meters, so Yeah, but they were good sports, like, the guy who was sitting in the stern was just like he was just rowing, he was making it happen, like, he was I mean, he wasn't rowing, like, full all out, but, like, yeah, he was still keeping his form looking good, and he was gondoliering his bow partner, to the finish line, so, those things happen, and then
Yeah.
on Sunday, we went back just in the morning real quick because, out in Pittsford, they have this, Dick's Closeout store, and my
Oh,
daughter
yeah.
needed she needed some new sets of shorts for the end of running season, and then into summer, so, we went over the whole thing was that she would come with me to the regatta in the morning, like he came again, because on Saturday, he also had gelato for breakfast, which is a good way to, con your kids
Ooh.
going to a regatta, so we watched the high school 8s, high school
Oh,
8
nice.
and 4s and stuff like that, and they had some mixed 8s, and so, Our Lady of Mercy and Brighton, were
Mhm.
in a mixed 8, and the parents were joking that, it's Our Lady of Brighton, who was what the name of
Oh, that's
and then there was another mixed 8, I think, with Brighton and Fairport, and I think that,
mm,
they were calling it Brightport. So,
nice.
the kids were having fun, the Sunday weather was a little bit better, like, it was
Mhm.
just a little more pleasant, not raining, still a little overcast, still a little bit cool. I mean, it's definitely sweatshirt weather, whereas Saturday was like scarf, glove, hat.
Oh, boy.
And yeah, and then after we left the regatta on Saturday, we went to, Luke's County meet, and that was oh my gosh, it was raining sideways and
Oh,
cold, and, he ran the 4 by 800 and he ran I wanna say he ran the 800 also. So, so he had just qualified for both of those, so it was just kind of like one of these races where you get to participate, you're not necessarily going to win or in the best heat, but he put his best foot forward and he had a good time, and it's been a good track season for him. I think the 4 by 8 potentially can go to sectionals, but I'm not sure if he'll be running that or not, so he'll find out during the week during practice if that's something he's gonna do, so yeah, that's the follow-up report for all of the weekend happenings on our end, so tell me about what happened for you guys.
yeah, so we headed down on Thursday. So we feel like we just got back from Philadelphia from Stroudsbury last weekend.
Oh,
And then what is it? Scholastic Rowing Association of America. Which are more commonly referred to SRAs or Scholastic Nationals. So we head down on Thursday. We stayed the kids stayed at the same hotel that they were at last weekend. I did not stay at the same hotel as the kids either weekend, but all within a 5-minute drive, like very close by. And I think so. I doubt she listens to this, but Allison, who is our coordinator for the team, she's technically the registrar,
mhm.
but she does all of the planning for hotels and food and everything when we're away, which is a huge job. And that's kind of her day job is that she's an event planner. So when she joined, she has a senior that's graduating this year. But when she joined the team, she took a look at what was happening and said, I could do this better. Let me take this on. So props to her because that's
Yay.
what it takes for a nonprofit group of just people who not don't complain about any problems. They jump in and help. That's what we need. So she did that years ago and she's been perfecting that system ever since. So she just keeps going with what works, tweaking what doesn't. And I think we can all agree it's a pretty good system by now. Um so the kids, we got there. we excuse me. We start off by just going straight to the race course. So I only took Hannah this time. Last week I had a whole group, just because of the group that was going down to SRAs. There were a lot of parents going, and Hannah has just had so much homework accumulate over the last few weeks to catch up on. So we were hoping, and she got a little bit done on the way down, a little bit. But not having other kids in the car was nice, and I think she got a little rest too, which was nice. The drive down was pretty uneventful, luckily for us. we must have just hit the timing right. I didn't have any choice. I had to still get Keegan to school, and then we just left right after that.
Yeah.
And we got down there. I think we were asked to be down there at 1:30, and we were probably 10 minutes from the race course. Hannah sent a text to one of her fellow rowers. It was also the captain. She said, "What time are we supposed to be at the race course?" And the girl wrote back, I hope you left your house by now. Cause I guess the text kind of threw her off, like, "Oh, I haven't left yet. What time are we supposed to be down there?" So I was like, "Oh, you should tell her that we're about to leave our house. Like, we'll be there shortly. It won't take too long." We were only 5 or 10 minutes away. So that was kind of funny. But yeah, we got there early, so that was nice. Usually I'm late to arrive or just rushing to get there just barely on time. So Hannah was the only girl that was there when I dropped her off. And then there was a lot of so I went down, it was raining by then. I mean, it was just I just feel like this whole spring has just been
Yeah.
so rainy and wet. And um so she was doing her thing, and I had to park pretty far down. Like, that's the one thing about this race course is that there's not a lot of coordinated parking.
Yeah.
There's not even like a satellite lot with shuttles or anything. It's just basically like there's no instructions for parking unless you are like I don't even know what the buses do, but like if
Mhm.
you are a food truck or like truck, truck wagon truck, or if you are a trailer, obviously you could park in
Yeah.
the trailer lot. But yeah, other than that, there's no recommendations or instructions. So it's just like a free for all, good luck.
Mm.
So for practice, I parked pretty far down, but it was definitely a doable walk. Um, but the nice thing is it's all along the race course, so it's like this little park that goes along, and I got to see a lot as I was going back to the car. And then I just kind of it was raining, but not too bad, so I had my umbrella, I got my binoculars out, just kind of sat and watched some people out on the race course, and then realized like, "Oh, that's our food truck in front of me." So I went over and helped. I didn't really help, but offered to help. They had already put the tents up.
Mm.
Um, and just hung out with the parents for a while. We just wanted to wait and make sure all of the boats had gotten on the course. And parents were trickling in and saying, like, "Oh, so and so got stuck behind an accident." And like some of the parents were just like delayed by at least like 45 minutes because of
Oh,
some
wow.
accidents on the way down. But eventually, like I think we left the race course around 4. So
Wow.
like yeah, I think that was how long it took for everybody to get there, rig everything, get on the race course to practice. I saw some of the boats go up and down the race course a few times.
Oh,
Um, I was able to get some video of Hannah, not great video, but something.
yeah.
And yeah, they were all really cold and wet by the time they
Mhm.
got into the car. And then, we've done this. The kids love Olive Garden, so we've been doing Olive Garden every time we're in that town, and we go to the same one, and they probably know us all by now. Um, and then, so Friday was time trial heats.
Mhm.
So they actually, this race they do heats. They don't do like the head style time
Yeah.
trials like the last few races. Um, so freshmen, so for Shen, the team that we were with, we had 5 boats that were at SRAAs. So we had our freshman boys quad, we had a junior girls quad, a junior boys quad, a senior boys quad, and a senior girls double. Those were our entries. Everything was pretty much back to back for heats in the afternoon, like pretty late in the afternoon, except for the boys quad. Um, so they were, I think, at 9, sometime in the morning, like 9:20 or something. So a bunch of the kids that weren't in that boat came down and watched their race. So that was really nice, that they were there to cheer their teammates on. Uh, and then it was just like back to back, starting at 2:45, I think. That was when the senior girls heat was. And then it was like 3:05, 3:15, and then some 4
Oh, wow.
something. But yeah, so and then I just want to say, like, when so you're at this stage, right? This is Scholastic Nationals. So the teams that were there, these are high school based teams, right? That's what
Mm,
Scholastic means. So in the spring season, we've raced both Scholastic and Club. New York State Championships has entries for both, and you might even be in the same race as some club teams and Scholastic teams. That's pretty much the norm. Um, but you're not going to see any of the club teams at this regatta. So it was kind of similar, though. There was a lot of teams that were at Stotesbury the weekend before because
mm,
Stotesbury is also all Scholastic.
yeah,
So but it's still, it's kinda new and you have to qualify to get there. So, you kind of embrace I don't know if you do this, but, like, even when s with football teams or anything like that, like, you figure out who you're gonna support, even if normally they would be
yeah,
competitor to you. So, like,
mm,
I had printed off the race schedule, we're sitting there, we got there a little early, we're watching the races, and, I start picking out, "Okay, who am I rooting for?" So, it's the New York teams, we gotta support our New York teams. Obviously, Capital District. We had entries from Shen. We had Burnt Hills,
mm,
Niskayuna, and Augustin Classical, Shaker, and Emma Willard. I think Saratoga. There was I think one boat from Saratoga. So if they were in a race, I was rooting for them. And I have to say, New York State did pretty well overall. We represented our state well. So props to all of those teams.
mhm,
Canisius, I have to say, really was like the big. Well, so New York State in any of the eights, really, we didn't have a lot of showing except for Canisius. Canisius, and I hope I'm right on that now that I put it out there in the world, but I'm pretty sure I looked at the results last night. So Canisius boys senior eight and second eight, I think both got gold. So that was pretty cool for
yeah,
them. So good for them. Um, and in terms of other medals for Capital District, as far as I know, or yeah, I think this goes even for New York State. Um, so ACA, Augustin Classical, they're based here in this area. They're very small, but pretty competitive team. And one of the girls that rode with Hannah this summer, because I guess they didn't really run a summer program last year.
oh,
She rode with ECAC, and Hannah was in her group. Her name is also Hannah. She won the doubles, the junior girls double race. So that was pretty awesome for her. She's strong, she's really good, and, it was really cool to see that. And, let's see, my friends well, I think we talked about them before, but the Dankos, they have,
mhm,
so they're both former rowers, and they have
mhm,
2 girls, and, they were both there racing, and their
mhm,
youngest, who's a freshman, I think they got silver in the freshman girls quad. So
wow,
that's exciting.
yeah,
But yeah, so I have to talk about Hannah's race. Let me just say, so many emotions during that race. I had all of the pins and needles. My heart was racing. I don't ever believe it until like I'm like, am I believing what I'm seeing? Am I sure I got the right lane? So we're watching it. Let me just say, SRAs, thank you. Free live stream on YouTube. The chef's kiss in how to do it. Because let me tell you, when you get used to that and you can scroll back and scroll forward instantly, you don't have to wait until the recordings to come out. You don't have to pay for the recording. Good
yeah,
job. I hope more people keep doing that because it is just so helpful and awesome. So we were watching on the live stream while we couldn't see what was happening. And then so they started off right away. There was one team that was way out ahead
mm,
and like way out by probably 250. They had a few boat links on everyone.
oh, wow.
Not Shaq. Yeah, there's other team.
Yeah,
And then there was just a huge group that was kind of fighting for that second spot. As the race progressed, you could see like Hannah's boat, and Germantown Friends were kind of battling it out for that second place until the very end. And then I know you've seen the video, but, um, it didn't take until, like, after everything happened and I watched it again. I mean, I was pretty impressed with how much ground they covered and gained on that first place. And the commentators even mentioned that too, is that, when you have a boat that's neck and neck with you and you're, like, taking turns with for that lead position, it
Mm.
does really push you more than you could ever know that you could be pushed, and that's what Hannah did talk about later, was that they could her boat of girls could hear the other boat screaming. They didn't know
Mhm.
what they were saying, but they could hear them screaming, and it
Oh.
just pushed them harder and harder. And they, at one point, so they had their start, and Hannah was stroking, and the three seat said something like, "Hannah, we got to keep this. We're not gonna be able to settle." And Hannah's like, "Okay, here we go." And she just did what she could. So the weather, let me say, on Friday they were pretty bad. On Saturday, for everybody who made finals, I mean, it just looked even worse. So,
Mhm.
I don't know. It's kinda like she definitely could have made finals. We don't know what would have happened,
Mhm.
but those conditions on Saturday were probably, I don't know, 10 times worse than they were on Friday, and they were bad on Friday. Though there were just gusts, and it was a strong tailwind, which,
Mhm.
I mean, the nice thing is the race is over sooner, but
Yeah.
it's just trying to, like, understand what your oar is doing, and I think it was all the kids that were coming off the race course were just saying how sore their forearms were. I think that's probably what happened. I mean, I've watched the video a few times. I've talked to Hannah as much as she's comfortable sharing because it's kinda heartbreaking to go through again, but I think everybody was just saying, like, especially in the sculling boats when you only have that one hand on the oar handle, and, you got a lot of splash, it's rainy, things are slippery, you're tired and fatigued. I think what happened is just the one just got away from her, and with the speed that they were going, it got away from her, and it just got away from her, and it ended up, I don't know how close they were to the finish. It was maybe 150 meters, maybe 200. I don't know how wasn't right at the end, but it was far enough where they were still battling for that spot, and they were almost overlapping with the first place boat. So,
Mhm.
I don't think they could have had first, but they definitely could have had second at that point. I mean, we would never know, but yeah, that crab, it just got it went all,
Oh, no.
I mean, you could see that part on the video. The boat just stopped. And then I don't know at what point it broke, but from where I was standing, I could see her fighting with it. And
Mhm.
then we were just yelling at them, keep going, keep going, keep going. As soon as you could see, like, the shock, and then just, like, trying to release the oar from being stuck and yelling at them, and they did. So they actually still beat a boat, which is like, okay, good job, right? Like, the bow 3, they took it up and finished, and then all of a sudden, I'm just standing there in shock, and one of the other moms from a different, not a mom of that boat. I was standing with another mom from her boat, and we're like, "What happened?" And we were, like, so mad. We're like, "Oh my god," like, "something
Mhm.
happened," or, I don't know, we didn't know what was the chain of events. Like, did the equipment break that caused the stop?
Yeah.
Did the crab cause the equipment break? So,
Yeah.
we were just very confused, but then all of a sudden we could see something in Hannah's lap. The other mom grabbed my binoculars, and I'm like, "What's in Hannah's lap? What is that? Is that her blade?" She's like, "Yeah, that's Hannah's blade in her lap." So I was like, "What?" I don't know what happened. I do have to say that her teammates and her coaches were amazing. The other parents on the team were amazing. This makes all the difference, right? Because you and I mean, I don't know if anything that dramatic ever happened to me during a race, but both of us have definitely caught crabs before.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and, it can happen in a race, and when it's, even if it's just a little one,
Mhm.
you feel like, if we only lost by this much, was it because of me? You start blaming yourself. It was unavoidable. I mean, I really do think it was just something that it just couldn't, it just happened. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing anyone can get mad about, but it is something a hard pill to swallow for everybody involved. But everybody was really good. Her coaches, two of the coaches came over and told her stories of like either them or their, kids that it happened to. Um, and then by the end, like to take that picture, and I shared it with you. I didn't put it on on Instagram because I think it's a little misleading. Like, she's smiling as she's holding the 2 pieces of the oar, but
Mhm.
it took her a lot to get to that point, it was
Yeah.
a lot of people coming up to her with words of encouragement and support, because there was a lot of tears and not
Oh.
bad sportsmanship tears. It was just that all those emotions, right? Like, I think that's what it
Yeah.
was. I mean, I was crying, another mom was crying, not because we were disappointed in the girls by any means. It was
Yeah.
just all the emotions of like, "Oh my god, are they actually gonna do this?" Like, we just couldn't believe it. 2 of the girls in the boat were freshmen, it's they really impressed at least us, like, standing there, we were really impressed with them.
Yeah.
And then, it just doesn't work out sometimes, but, yeah, so that's the story from Nationals for at least for Hannah,
Mhm.
for her boat and as her from her mom's perspective. Um,
So hard, these kids, they work so hard and like, states and SRAs, like those are like the goals. Those are the things you talk about in the winter. Like you talk about doing that extra 500-meter piece because, it's the bow ball, that, when you win by the bow ball that, they know it's that extra piece that you did during the winter that made the difference. Like, you're always building up those moments and then to get to the moment and then have something completely out of your control be the reason why, not because you didn't train hard or you didn't, come to practice or, it's equipment failure. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
it happens, and crabs happen too. It's tough. Like you said, when you're sculling and you've got those grips on there and it's wind and it's raining and it's cold and you're going fast, like you're holding I mean, you got your fingers crossed most of the time. It's amazing that, like, it doesn't happen more because it's just you're moving so fast, your hands are wet, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing, right? Like, what can you do? And that's what she starts saying, like, "What could I have done?" And it's like, I don't know, because
Yes, you could.
if to give the advice, it's like, you might have to hang on a little tighter. Well, that's what they're doing instinctually anyway. And then by the end of the race, they're just so tired because their forearms are just like,
Oh,
working
yeah.
harder than they normally work. And they had a higher rating. So they're doing more strokes than normal.
Mhm.
And there's just nothing you can do at one point. You just have a little slip, and that's how quick things can happen.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, it did happen. I mean, it was happening at other races. I don't think I saw anyone else that, broke an orb at that race. I didn't watch all the races. It could have happened.
Yeah.
But I was watching some of the finals and there were definitely, it was funny because we were there, near the finish line and they have the big, huge live streams screen,
Mhm.
right next to the finish.
Yeah.
So it's set up so like people were watching it and if you're not watching it along, but you're just in the area, all of a sudden you hear, like, gasp, and then you hear, "What?" Like, as if it blacked out for a second and people would just, like, react instantaneous. So it was kind of exciting to be in that area because 'cause you'd hear all these, like, simultaneous sounds from
Yeah.
people, and so that was kind of funny, but, yeah, the other races, so, um, anything eventful I mean, I have to say our boys quad, they've been really fast through the last few years, and they had a lot of expectations going into this. They worked so hard. Um, I think they ended up getting 4th place, which was a huge disappointment. I could tell because they were fighting it. Like they were I think at some point it was looking like 3rd was theirs, like, not only just, like, for 1st and 2nd probably aren't gonna happen, but that they were the surely gonna finish in 3rd boat, and then I think that day, because again, like, race courses, there's not much you can do about having like, a lane that just,
Mhm.
doesn't get affected by weather as much as others, or depending on what the way the weather's working, it could be different lanes. But lane 1 was definitely more protected. And all of a sudden, like at the end of their race, lane 1 just came out of nowhere and kind of took that 3rd spot. So our boys ended up in 4th, and they were, pretty upset. It's a disappointment, right? Like
Yeah.
they're going to youth national, so they have
Mhm.
this like we are good, we are strong, like we're gonna make things happen. So I know that was a disappointment for them to be so close to medaling.
And youth
But
nationals are, is it the 2nd weekend in June, or is it 1st?
yeah, so we have our banquet. I think it's on a Sunday on the 8th, and then it's the week after that.
Like, after that, so, like, in the teens, right? Is it Father's Day weekend?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. But I'm pretty sure it's like the 12th and 13th or something like that. So, yeah, that's a Florida race, so that's, quite the trip. So
Yeah.
they're doing a GoFundMe to support, that trip because there's just so many more costs involved
Oh,
with that.
yeah. Yeah, that one, I mean, that's tough, like, when the kids qualify for it, you're like, "Yay!" then you're like, "Oh." It's just like, now we gotta get there, now we gotta get them there, we gotta get the parents there, we gotta figure out hotel, yeah, like, the
Boats and
whole,
everything. Yeah, I
yeah.
think they're definitely transporting their boats. There's enough local teams that are going together, so they're just gonna I think Saratoga might be using their trailer, and then there's just like a shared trailer cost.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so there's 2 so our senior girls double and the senior boys quad, they'll be going down. Um, but yeah, so that I mean, it was cool to be there. I mean, Hannah talked to a few coaches, college coaches, so that was kinda nice. And just to kinda like, it's a different scene, it's another race, so far she's been to just a few race courses. I mean, she's been to
Yeah.
Saratoga, of course.
Mhm.
She went to Soates Ferry last year and this year. Um, and then local races, Head of the Hudson, Pittsford. Yeah, we missed Pittsford this year, but
Yeah.
that is such a cool race, and I was kind of sad that we wasn't able to connect with you there, but yeah, that I know the kids from our team that went had a great time. Well, at least I think so. I haven't talked to any of them, but I haven't heard
Yeah.
otherwise.
It was a fun time by all, and, like, the weather, like I said, was a little plus minus to start out with and then got better towards the end, so it was I did take some video of the eights races and a couple different things, so I'll shoot some. I don't know if I have any Shun video, like, I'll have to look back at the ones I took video of and see if I've got any, but yeah, yeah, it's good stuff, and, the race season, like, it's kind of weird because for the kids, this is kind of the closing. Pittsford Regatta is kinda like the end of the spring for them if they're not doing, if they're not going to youth nationals, but, for the masters, it's almost like the kickoff.
Yeah.
So the masters are kinda, like, getting back in the boat, getting ready for summer, getting some, solid rowing in, so it's kinda interesting how, the kids are always, like, kind of, like, sad and, like, ready to throw their coxswain in the water, whereas the masters are like, "Well, what are we doing this summer?" And, like, "How did we do?" And, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
it's very interesting how the seasons kind of, change depending on, what level you're rowing in, and I think, the next masters race, I think would be that's local for us would be West Side Invitational. So that's like I wanna say that's
Today, like, weekend, right?
yeah, like, is it 4th of July weekend or the weekend
So,
after? And
yeah.
then, Independence Day, that's Philly, right?
Yeah. In Philly, yep.
So that's,
Yeah,
like,
we don't
probably the same weekend, right? I would
Yeah, I
think.
think it's the same weekend, yeah. Yeah, we
Yeah.
haven't done that. I don't know if this team that Shannon or Burn Hills or East, I don't think they've ever done that.
Yeah. That's
It's
a
kind of
actually, it's a kind of, I've gone and done, like, a tent there before, I've never rode it, but the time that I did do the tent, the weather was beautiful, and it was, seemed really low key. Like, it felt like, it wasn't super packed, it didn't, like, because they do, like, the John Bennett, I think that's the spring one. I always
Now here we go again.
yeah, I always forget which one's which. So I think the
Yeah.
John Bennett is the spring one. I always feel like that one's very hectic, like, there's a lot of people there. If the conditions are okay and they're actually running it, it's not getting too much wind or ice or whatever, I always feel like it's very hectic. There's just boats everywhere. Whereas like the West Side Invitational was very like kind of low key. I mean, there were trailers, but there wasn't like it wasn't like standing room only, trailers really tight in the parking lot. Um, and then I know some people do the Bernicki, and I think that's in Canada. I think up in St. Catharines. Um,
Yes. Actually,
got a couple
you're
week bills before.
yeah, so there's also the Dominion Day Regatta, which
Oh.
I noticed. I don't know if they've done it the last few years, but I did that when I rode for West Side, and that was honestly maybe one of my favorite races, only
Oh.
because you have to take a ferry to get out there. Like it's on an island, which is
Mhm.
the craziest thing. So they take the trailer on the ferry,
Oh, wow.
go out to the fair, they go out to the and then there's this little tiny race course right there. And, yeah, it's kind of it's really a really neat experience. So, I'm
Okay.
glad to see that back on the calendar because I think I looked it up one time recently, and it doesn't look like they've had it. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but, so now obviously from where I live now, that's even more of a hike, right? Because you get
Yeah.
to Buffalo is like 4.5 hours, if not more, definitely with a trailer. And then to get to Henley, you're talking, you know, 6 hours, and then if
Okay.
you're gonna keep heading north because it's in Toronto, but it's like go to Toronto, and then from Toronto, you take the ferry over to the island, so but from Buffalo, it's definitely doable, so
Mhm.
that is a cool race if
Okay.
anyone's looking for a race to do. Um and I did forget to mention, so I apologize to my master's team that I row with. They did have a few boats there. And obviously we talked about Dan, but I think the women had a quad and they did pretty well. And there was a double. And then our coach and one of his former teammates from high school rowed. And I think that they rowed in a quad. So it was like a mixed quad.
Mhm.
And it was with his I'm not mistaken, I think it was with his mom and not the coach. So there's the coach, his teammate,
Mhm.
and then the teammate's mom and aunt. So
Aw.
that's kind of a neat combination. Yeah, so
Yeah.
they race. I can't remember how they did.
And
But
you know what?
it's just kind of one of those yeah, where you can put those kinds of lineups together.
And Pittsford has an alumni race, and I always forget that, so we could row an alumni boat there. So, I think this year I think just Mercy, like Mercy alumni, I think they did like a 4, but there is an alumni race, so if we wanted to put together any alumnis, I mean, we're talking about any schools that may wanna Pittsford is a good option to get out there and do like a 4 or do an 8, and we'll help with boats, so let me know, if people wanna come out and because there's lots of boats there, and I think they run the alumni race, I think, at the very end of the Saturday, potentially. Or it might be the very end of the Masters activities on Saturday before they do the high school activities in the afternoon. So I think it might be like right in smack dab in the middle of the day. So there's still time for, getting some food at Aladdin's or stopping at the brewery.
Nice. Oh, I love Aladdin's. Yes.
Mhm. Oh,
Very
yeah.
like falafels at Aladdin's. So I missed that this
It's good stuff. And what else? Oh, what else did I wanna say? I had something just popped in my head and jumped right back out.
Sorry.
Oh,
We were talking about races and I talked about Dominion Day, so I'm not sure if that
okay.
but
Um, well, as far as I talked to, Matt Logue while I was, and he said his sister's looking into getting some people ready for UB to maybe do the Charles as an alumni boat.
oh,
So I will have to reach out to it's Caitlin, right?
yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
Caitlin Lowe. Yep.
So I have to try to connect with her and see, how far along they are with how many people they have. So that would be really neat. Maybe get some people to do a UB alumni 8 and what else do we talk about?
Is she coaching somewhere?
I don't know. I don't know cuz she's still in Buffalo, I think, right?
Oh, okay. I don't know. But yeah.
So yeah, we'll have to figure that all out. As far as news in Rochester, the Brockport community rowing on the canal is starting and they have a bunch of activities coming up in June. So if anyone's interested in that, shoot me an email and I'll get you connected with the stuff that's going on there. I think they're doing kind of like they have the community of Brockport has a couple activities going on at the in the June, and so they're kind of piggybacking off of those and, like, introducing people to the sport of rowing and the sport of rowing on the canal, out in Brockport, so more rowing communities kinda popping up, which is good. Um yeah, yeah, it's the transition season, just trying to get everybody and you get these kids kind of ready for summer, and, I was inspiring my children a little bit. I was like, "Maybe we should do a learn to row this year," like, trying to figure out which learn to row to send my kids to because I live on one side of the town, and then, like, all the rowing's on the opposite side, so I have to figure out which one has the timing that works best, but Mikey's 11, so he's middle school now, so he's gonna be going into 7th grade, so, get him out there in a tubby single and teach him the ropes, and Emma's a freshman going to be a sophomore, so, maybe there's a sweep program where she could do some learn to row, but, as a mom who has a double, I'm like, just hop in the boat with me, I'll teach you how to do it."
Yeah.
But it's much easier to learn it from a formal program than your mom sitting behind you yelling at you. "No, don't do it like that."
Um, yeah, and did you see that I shared the post that West Side shared that they're teaming up with Buffalo Scholastic this summer?
I saw that, so that's good, like, it's good to be able to join forces and get some things done, and so that's a learn to row program for was that middle school? And
I got the sense that this is more on the competitive side, but I'm not sure.
oh,
I didn't.
okay.
Yeah, so which again, like I'm a big proponent of good luck. I think I wish them all the luck and good collaboration and work well together because that can be challenging when you've got a couple cooks in the kitchen. So, but I wish them well because although we'll be competing against them and they're going to be even that much more tough to compete against. I think that's great. I think, it gives kids another opportunity, different coaching opportunities to hear from different people. Um, and I know some people don't think that that's good. They have their opinions about that.
Mhm.
My opinion is I think it's always good to hear from different people. The styles might change, but I think, you get different feedback. People notice different things. They
Mhm.
can give attention to different types of rowers. Different rowers can hear different things. I think it's all really good. So I wish them the best.
Oh, yeah, that should be good,
Exciting.
that should be great. I think, as far as, like, competitive programs here in Rochester, I think, Pittsford runs their competitive program during the summer, and that's about it for competitive, and then some of the other teams run like, the Scholastic teams run their Learn to Rows, trying to get their middle schoolers prepped and ready for coming into rowing in the fall, if they're, 7th and 8th graders moving up and gonna be joining the team that fall that they kinda do their summer stuff, but otherwise, competitive wise, it's just really Pittsford that kind of leads the charge here in Rochester, but
So any of the local Rochester teams, those kids will row with Pittsburgh over the summer?
yeah, most of the time, it's just a little bit easier. I mean, some of the teams are so small, that kind of running their own competitive program during the summer is just really taxing on, like, the team infrastructure, like, whether it be coaching or that kinda thing. Pittsford I think they have quite a few coaches, and so they're able to kind of people who wanna coach during the summer are able to coach, people who wanna sit out and take a break can take a break, and so it's not as taxing on the actual team as it would be on some of these teams that may only have 2 coaches, and then if you're running a summer program and it's a competitive program, you're basically putting away boats to take them back out to start another season, another round of training up again, so I think that a lot of, um a lot of the teams just kinda defer. And it's good for the kids to cross train, I think it's just really important to move your body in a different way, so, biking, running, swimming, anything that can kind of get you moving differently, or even picking up a totally different sport during the summer. My of course, as I say that, my kids are doing run camp. They run all season, and then they wanna be with their friends and do run camp, which is good, and I think that one thing that I had this idea of is that, running a rowing camp as a cross training camp. So,
Mhm.
like, if you're an endurance athlete in another sport, so if you're a swimmer, if you're a runner, if you do potentially something completely different. You play basketball or you play volleyball, like, to cross train during the summer, maybe you should pick up rowing, pick up a competitive rowing program and do that during the summer just to move your body in a different way.
Yeah.
Um, I think we get so hyper focused on, especially as the kids get into high school and the specialization, and you want to be prepared for college and recruitment and that kind of thing. So you're like, oh, I can't waste any time doing something else. But you're really not wasting time. And I think what's interesting is I saw a reel from US rowing, and it was the women's senior team, and they were talking about what their first 2K scores
I
were.
saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought it was super interesting, like, I was like, "Holy smokes," some of those people are, like, really fast from just, like they're like, "Yeah, my first 2K was a 7:26." I was like
I know, it's like, "Oh my god. Okay,
I'm
you're
like,
super
"That's
nuts."
insane." Um, but, like, a lot of the person who had said, like I think the person who said it was 7:26, like, I think they were recruited as a sophomore or a junior in college, you know what I mean? They came from another sport, plus they were probably, you know, 6 foot tall. And so like, it made sense to go ahead and, like, they had the endurance from something else. And there were only a sprinkling of the people who said that, like, their first 2K was in middle school with their
Yeah.
middle school team. Like, most people had a story where their first 2K wasn't until high school or wasn't until walking on in college. So, we think about, specificity, kids getting, introduced to a sport and then playing it, playing it, playing it. Whereas, like, the actual, especially for rowing, there's an advantage to be doing something a little bit different. Still, I mean, the advantage would definitely be to an endurance sport. So if you were a runner or a swimmer who decided to then become, a rower. Or I mean, basketball, I wouldn't say basketball is an endurance sport, but they do so many, like, power-based and, like, multiplanar movement and that kind of thing, which probably makes you very athletic, and that athleticism then translates to, rowing, just like, I always found gymnasts to be really good, like, the transition for gymnasts into rowing was always like, we had a couple girls on our team who were gymnasts before, and they innately kind of understood, like, the flexibility and the form in rowing and, like, the timing, like, they were good with timing because I think, like, just, like, tumbling takes timing, so, like, being able to apply your force directly at the catch, like, I felt like they were always really good at that. So, like, doing other sports can really translate into being really good at rowing, but a kid who loves rowing, you can't convince them to then become a basketball player for the summer. Like,
Well,
it's gonna be a
it's
reach.
also yeah, it's also because some kids don't really find their sport until they find rowing, because rowing is so kind of such is a unique thing, right? And
Yeah.
so it's kind of like, to say to a kid in middle school, like, yeah, you should go try something else. It's like, well, but this is my thing. Like, I finally found my thing, right? So there's those kids too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never thought there was a connection to it, but I did ballet for years. And I think dancers too, like, I think
Yeah.
part of it is the choreography and like being aware of your body, right? Like, as a ballet dancer, it's all about the fine details of like the point and like how to tighten certain muscles and flex and like turn out and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
that's all being aware of every muscle in your body, right? And that's very much what you need in rowing. And sometimes what I think is the disconnect for Hannah, for other rowers, she's told me at times she feels like she's not completely connected. She doesn't really have that feeling. That's something that she knows she's lacking, but she hasn't really had a coach be able to explain how to fix that or to work on it or to like really get her to feel that connection, including me. Like I've told her and showed her certain things, that either probably because mom said it, whatever. But it could be just that it just hasn't sunk in yet, and she hasn't been able to be in that situation. Like I'm not coaching her on the water, to be able to say like, okay, try this. Do you feel this? All right, now do this. Until recently, she has this a newer coach that joined the team, took her and her doubles partner out, and she was like, I had such a great experience because he said it in a way that made sense, and I was able to feel like my abs are sore. Like
Mhm.
whatever she changed during that practice, it was like, "Oh, like light bulb," like it clicked. And, and I think, she did a little bit of dancing growing up, but, like, to be able to find that awareness of, like, every muscle in your body is definitely something that is helpful in rowing, and like you said,
Mhm.
probably in gymnastics and also in dance too.
Mhm.
It's also like, I have a friend who does Zumba, and she's like, "I'm really bad at it, but I love it." She's like, "I just can't, like, watch someone do something and then do it myself." And I think some of that is, like, you learn it when you learn it as a kid, it's just something that you get as an adult a little bit better than somebody who didn't because, you were kinda
Mhm.
trained to do it. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember one day being out when I was coaching for West Side's Learn to Row.
Mhm.
I was, like, tiptoeing through all the coaches' boats, trying to get to somewhere, and the coach is like, "Were you a dancer?" I was like, "I was," and he's like, "Yeah, I can tell." Just, like, good balance,
Mhm.
good.
Yeah. It's I mean, I think, like, the athleticism, like, I always talk about how, like, when you see someone who's a really great athlete, like, what we're appreciating about that person is the ability to turn off the muscles that don't need to be on and turn on the muscles that need to be on, and the only way you learn that is, like, through perfecting movement, like, and being exposed to that, like, I think, like, these kids don't play as much as we did, and, not to go back and go, "Oh, well, we were all out, outside all the time," but we were, like, like, we would do silly things, like, you turn your front yard into a gymnastics, tumbling, spot, and you would be doing we would be out there for hours running back and forth doing cartwheels and somersaults and round-offs, and the one girl who could do the back handsprings would be doing them, and then you'd be like, "How do you do that?" And, like, or the random kids who would just learn how to do flips, like, that was super common, like, just, like, your friend would know how to like, would never have taken a class or anything like that, nobody taught them. They just knew how to, like, position their body to do a backflip, and, like, once you know what the position is, you can do it, like, on demand, like, that's the kids who do that all the time, and, like, I think, like, our kids just don't they don't like, we keep them, like, kind of, like, limited exposure, like, don't jump around, don't jump off of something, but, like, because they're not doing that, like, they don't know how to activate their bodies like that, and, I think sport can be, then that's where that disconnect comes from because you just don't have the opportunity to play with movement, like, they just don't have
Mhm.
as much of that play, and I always whenever, the high school coach asks me, like, "What kind of warm up do you suggest?" I'm like, "Is there a playground close to your to your
Aw.
house? Because if there is, I would tell the kid I give them 15 minutes, and I would tell them to, like, do the monkey bars, walk the balance beam, get on a swing and pump your legs back and forward and jump off of it, walk run up the slide, slide down the fireman pole, do a somersault over the bar, and then, like, chase around the playground 5 times and call it even." I'm like, that would be a more effective warm up than doing, like, everybody wants to do, like, that dynamic where, where they're, like, doing, like, the Frankensteins and, like, the lunge and the rotations, and I'm like, "That's all great,
Mhm.
but, like, it's like your body's made to be used functionally, and, like, if you spent a whole season, like, a kid who couldn't do the monkey bars at the beginning of the season, if you did it every time before practice, eventually by the end of the season, you'd have a
Mhm.
handful of kids who could fully do the monkey bars, or,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a big proponent of, like, just, like, good old fashioned gross motor, when these kids are small, and even for adults too. When's the last time, like, a lot of adults, I'll be like, "Can you hop on one foot?" Like, I'm like, "Hop on one foot?" I'm like, "Yeah, when's the last time you hopped on one foot?" Like, that's, like, balance, control, power, like, we kinda take all these motions out, and then when it's the person who's stepping out of the boat and, they're standing on one foot and they have to create that power where they're gonna have to lift the rest of their body up and pull that oar across. And, like, you can't expect to be able to do that if we're not exposing our bodies to silly stuff like hopping on one foot or, brushing your teeth on one foot. Like,
Oh,
it's
all right. I
important.
like that.
Yeah.
Think we I think we should say that to everybody. That's one thing we can all do, right? I haven't thought of that in a while. So
Yeah,
brushing our teeth with the
brushing your teeth,
opposite
standing on one
hand,
foot.
right?
Opposite hand, and then standing on one foot.
Okay.
It's good for, coordination of, opposite sides of the brain too, 'cause, if you're right-handed, then all the messaging and motoring for brushing your teeth, if you use your right hand, is on your left side of your brain, so then if you use your left hand, it's gonna activate the right side. They're gonna talk to each other, so it's good for the 2 sides of your brain to talk to each other.
Awesome. That is a great tip for all our listeners.
Well, we'll have to try to get our guests all in order. I think there's gonna be, like, a whole rash of, like, guest podcasts coming up at one point or another, but we gotta try to get everybody scheduled, which
Yes.
should get easier now that a lot of the racing's kind of concluding. I think the last one will be nationals, and then after that, like, most of the coaches we need to talk to will be free for a little bit, so
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
but
Cool.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thanks everyone for listening, and Kate, I hope you have a great week, and we'll keep it moving, right?
Yeah, yeah. Keegan has his mod champs on Saturday, so I'll have that to talk about. So that's
Yay.
exciting. Yep. So yeah. All right. And any of our guests, anybody we talk to, we haven't forgotten about you. We will be in touch and we're excited to talk to
Yes, you definitely are. Thanks, Kate. You have a great rest of the week.
you. You too. Bye. Bye.